Welcome to Ayurveda and Spirituality with your host, Alakananda Ma, a renowned Ayurvedic expert and a graduate of a top London medical school. She is the principal of Alundi Ayurveda Gurukula, a unique apprenticeship-style school in Boulder, Colorado. She is a spiritual mother, teacher, flower essence maker, and storyteller. Join us as we uncover the timeless principles of Ayurveda, discover practical tips for enhancing vitality, and explore the deeper dimensions of spirituality that intertwine with the ancient science of life.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Thanks for being here. Satsang is a meeting of hearts, a gathering of friends to inquire into the truth. And today we're beginning our exploration of Prashna Upanishad. And Prashna means questions. The invocation. Om. Gods, may we hear good fortune with our ears. You worthy of sacrifice, may we see good fortune with our eyes. Having praised you with bodies strong of limb, may we attain lifelong what is ordained by the gods. May Indra of great swiftness, may Pushan the all-knowing, may Turkasha Arishtanemi, may Brihaspati ordain well-being for us. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, how do you get to ask a teacher a question? All you have to do is put your hand up, right? Ma. Ooh, that's not actually how it works. How do you ask a question? These very great sages, some of whom are quite familiar to us from Ayurveda, Sukeshan Bharadwaj, Shaibya Satyakama, Sauryayanan Gargya, Kaushalya Asavalayana, Bhargava Vaiderbi, and Kabandin Katyayana, intent on Brahman, established in Brahman. They're already so far along the path we can't even imagine, but they want more. They're intent on Brahman. They're established in Brahman. They seek the supreme Brahman. So they come to a guru. They come to the blessed Pippalyada. How do they come? Fuel in hand. You come fuel in hand to the teacher. You come bringing wood for their fire. That's what they need. So they always come fuel in hand. They get there and they have to work. So they, with fuel in hand, seeking the supreme Brahman, they approach blessed Pippalyada, thinking, he'll teach us all about it. So here's what Shankara says about this bit. The story of the sage questioning and the sage replying is to eulogize knowledge. It praises knowledge. And all of them have the long forms of their names, which is pretty interesting. We're not used to them having those like double names. They've all got long form, very formal names. Like Gargya has got a long form name. They've all got their long form names, and they're approaching the worshipful preceptor Pippalyada with loads of samit, loads of fuel in their hands, because they want to know Brahman and they think he'll be the one to explain it to them. So what's going to happen? They've come, they've brought him stuff, they are highly respected teachers, He's got to say, yes, my sons, let's hear your questions. Nope, that's not what happens. He says, uh, spend a year with us and practice tapas, practice asceticism, practice brahmacharya, practice shraddha, practice faith, and of course, chop wood and carry water because that's what you do. That's why you came with fuel in hand. So these very, very, very eminent sages like Bhardwaj and Gargya are going to spend a year with Pippalyada, chopping wood, carrying water, doing his laundry, practicing celibacy, practicing tapas, austerities, practicing great faith. Live with us for a year in asceticism, celibacy, and faith. Can you hear well enough? Then, yes, then ask whatever questions you want to ask. And if I know the answer, I'll teach it to you. How do I know? This is from being the one that gets asked questions. Someone says, I want to ask you a question, and you're like, okay, am I going to know the answer to this question or not? If I know the answer to the question, then I'll answer it. So Shankara's commentary, the seer said to them who had thus approached him, although you have already performed tapas by controlling your senses, still live a year here, being especially careful about brahmacharya, about celibacy and faith, and well intent on serving your preceptor. Then, as you please, don't hold back. You won't have to hold back. Ask any questions on any subjects. And if we know the answer, Shankaracharya says, this is to make sure we know that Pippalyada is not conceited. He's not like, I'll know the answer to every question in the world. He's like, if I do know the answer, I'll tell you. But you got to work for it. Then the year has gone by. They've worked really, really hard, chopping wood, carrying water, washing the sage's dhoti and his langoti, doing all the things they have to be done. So then, a year later, comes the first question. So fast forward, or if it's a movie, now it's going to say 1 year later, they're a bit thinner, they may be a little bit grayer, they've got more muscles from all the wood chopping. Then Kabandhin Katyayana approached him and asked, Blessed One, from where are all these creatures born? The word for creatures is praja. We got familiar with that word ja, right? We have vataja, pittaja, kaphaja, etc., meaning born of those doshas. That ja bit is born. Praja, just add that pra is like a little emphasis. Where does everything come from? It's a good question. Um, where does everything come from? Apparently, this seems to be one of the questions that our humble sage feels comfortable answering. So what does he say? He says, Prajapati desired offspring. So this is some little puns happening. So Prajapati, great grandfather, has that word Praja in it. So we translate Prajapati as great grandfather because that's a comfortable translation for us here in the Western United States, where we like to hang out with people from indigenous traditions who use that word great grandfather. But Prajapati really means the the Lord of the Prajas. He's can also be translated as progenitor, which is why we make it great grandfather. So Prajapati, the Lord of the creatures, desired Praja. He's bored and lonely all by himself. This is a very common theme in creation stories that we see in the Vedic tradition, is that uh, somebody, often Prajapati, gets bored and lonely and wants somebody to play with, wants somebody to hang out with. So Prajapati wants Praja. So what does he do? He raises some heat. Tapas. What have our sages just been doing for a year? Tapas. They've just been raising heat. So Prajapati is going to raise that tapas. He's going to raise some heat, even some sweat. When he raises that heat, he is going to give rise to a couple. A pair. The food and the eater. Because he thinks, as long as I can make a couple, that's how babies get made. I need a couple. Translated matter and breath in our book, and translated in Shankara's commentary, or translated in Wisdom Library as food and the eater. So the matter, tapotya satapastva samitonamat padyate. They're going to do mituna. They're going to have sex. Rayam chapranam chatyatume bahudha praja karishyata iti. So the prana is going to be the eater of the food. So he's going to that they're going to get together. They're going to do the mithuna. That they're going to do the joining together to produce offspring. This pair, Rayam cha Pranam, are the Sanskrit words, variously translated. Food and the eater, matter and breath, definitely breath, prana, Rayam cha Prana. They're going to produce the offspring. So Shankara says, to him who thus, to the questioner, Pippalyada replies to solve his doubt. Wishing to create the creatures out of himself, the Lord of creatures, Prajapati, the Atman of all, thinking to create the universe, acting according to the word filled with thought. It's very interesting when Shankara goes into the word filled with thought, because then we go back to, okay, John, Enarche and hologos. In the beginning was the Word. We go back to Genesis. The first thing that happens, God says something, which is the Word, right? God says, "Let there be light." It's a word. So this word, which is filled with thought, what is this word? According to Shankara, he goes to Hiranyagarbha, the golden embryo, born at the beginning of this kalpa, being the Lord of all created beings, and things movable and immovable revolved in his mind the knowledge acquired in his previous birth, revealed by the scriptures. So, having thus brooded over this knowledge imparted by the Srutis, he produced this couple necessary for creation. So, the Prajapati is the Atman, the self of all. And he thinks it'd be really fun to have a universe. Meher Baba goes on about this idea of the whim, that basically God doesn't need us, but it's more fun with us. So God has a whim to have all of us happen. So because it's more fun to watch a movie than sit in front of the blank screen. It God wants to have this whim. That's how Meher Baba puts it. And we're really right here in the kind of things that the great Meher Baba talks about in God Speaks, an amazing book that explains all about everything. So the Atman of all, the self of all, is Prajapati, the progenitor, the great grandfather. He wants to create the universe according to the word filled with thought. He is Hiranyagarbha, he is the golden embryo. And he thinks it over because universes keep getting created and destroyed. This has happened before. How did I do it last time? Oh, I think we have to have a couple. So Shankara says that it's the moon and the sun. The moon is food and the sun is prana, the fire that eats the food. The moon, that is food, and prana, the fire, the sun that eats the food. Thinking that Agni, the sun, and the moon, so Agni, the sun, so he's seamlessly, Shankara, in his commentary, has seamlessly tied together prana, the breath of life, Agni, the fire, the sun, they've all become one, and the moon has gotten seamlessly tied together with food. So the moon is food, the sun is prana, which eats the food. Agni, the sun, and the moon, the food, when they get together, will have the diverse creatures. So he creates the sun and the moon. This is Shankara's commentary on it. The sun is breath. This is the actual verse from Prashna Upanishad. The sun is prana. Matter is the moon. Matter is all this, the shaped and the unshaped. Shape is matter. The other translation, the sun is life. The sun is prana. There's no life without the sun. All life comes from the sun, right? The sun gives us light and warmth, and we depend on the sun. The sun is life indeed, and the moon the food. All this, the form and the formless, is food or is matter. So matter or form is definitely food. Or other translation, shape is matter. Is this making sense at all? It's kind of a complicated answer to the question. But here, Shankara says, here, the sun is prana, the ether, the moon, the ether and the fire, the agni. The moon is the food. Indeed, the moon is the food. This pair, the ether and the food, are really one. They're different aspects of Prajapati. They're not separate, according to Shankara, who doesn't like anything to be anything other than Advait or one. They're different aspects of Prajapati. The distinction is really one of secondary and primary. Everything, be it gross or be it subtle, is in one aspect food, whether it's already taken form, whether it's formless. The ether is the food. So when we make dinner, he says, what has form and what has not, the, the food is the form, the ether, Shankara is now saying, is the formless. So the moon makes the food. We can also think of that in yoga terms because we have the moon corresponds to the soma, which in the yogic body corresponds to the neurotransmitters balance. That gets eaten by the cell. We can't function without that soma, without our neurotransmitters. We're going to freeze. So that's eaten by the sun, which is our intellect, our consciousness is eating this soma. In fact, there are lots of techniques in Hatha Yoga. Why do we do Viparita Karani? Why do we do inversions? So the soma, the moon can get a break from being eaten by the sun. And if we can give the moon a break, that's the meaning of Hatha. If we can give the moon a break from being gobbled up by the sun, we can live longer. Because we'll have more moon, so we'll live longer. And when we go upside down, then the sun can't eat the moon. That gives a break. So it's all fitting in with this same idea. When the sun rising enters the eastern direction, it holds the living beings in the east by its in all its rays. So it comes up in the east. Ataditya Udayan Pracham Disham Pravishati. When the sun rises in the east, it holds all the living beings in the east in its rays. And as it journeys along, it illuminates the southern, the western, and the northern direction, the nether, the zenith, the intermediate directions, and it holds all living beings in its rays. Now, the translation: the sun rising enters the east, bathes in his rays all prana in the east. When he lights up the south, the west, the north, the nadir, the zenith, the interspace, and all, by that he bathes in his rays all prana. And Shankara says, similarly, the formless, the prana, the ether, is all, but the food is also prana. Now the sun, it rises, it becomes perceivable by the eyes of living beings. It lights up the east with its light, pervading all with its light, makes the lives in the east one with himself. All living beings pervaded by his all-pervading rays of light Similarly, when he lights the south, the west, all his directions of space, he bathes all lives in all directions in his all-pervading light. It's starting to sound yummy, right? There's a sun that just makes us one with the sun, bathing us all in its light. We come to life. This same breath, Vaishvanara, this is verse 7, which takes all forms, rises as fire. This has been told in the Rig Veda. This is he, the totality of all living beings, assuming every form, life and fire, who rises every day. This is told in the Rig Veda. Sadananda's friend, the old Pandit in Alandi, and I also did get to experience the old Pandit doing this. The old Pandit is losing his eyesight, but he has one spiritual practice he will never fail from, which is to stand at his window in the morning and watch the sun rise. That's basically the old Pandit's whole spirituality. He's so steeped in the Vedic view. To him, as long as he's there to watch the sun rise in the east and illumine Alandi and him and all living beings with its light, that's it. That's his practice. That's what he does. Pretty amazing. I literally watched him do it, and it was deeply impressive because he had such devotion to this Vedic view, where the sun is the illuminator of all, where the sun is the representation of the self. So Shankara says, this is he, the eater, the life, the self of all, assuming all forms, being the Atman, the self of the universe, prana and fire. This is the eater who rises every day, making all the cardinal points his own. And it's now going to be explained by a mantra from the Rig Veda. Of all forms, yellow, all-knowing, the supreme goal, the one light, the giver of heat, the thousand-rayed, existing in 100 forms, the sun rises as the breath of creatures. Vishwarupam Harinam Jata Vedasam Parai Yanam Jyoti Rektam Tapantam Sahasrashmi Shatadha Vartamana Prana Prajnamodhayatesha Surya. Surya is the sun. Having all forms, Vishwarupam, of universal form, Harinam, shining, Jatavedasam, knowing all, Parayanam, the highest, Jyotirektam, the soul light, Tapantam, the heat giver, Sahasrashmi, with 1,000 rays, Shatada, Bhartmana prana, existing in 100 forms. Sorry, prana, the life of creation. This sun rises. So this is quoting from the Rig Veda. This is the teaching that I saw the old Pandit embodying in his simple Vedic devotion. He never bothered with any pujas, any gods, any this, that, or the other. His thing was the sun rising. Having all forms, shining, omniscient, the highest support, the soul light, the heat giver, having 1,000 rays, existing in 100 forms, life of all creation, this sun rises. Shankara says pretty much what I said, translates each word. Vishvarupam, having all forms, Harinam, the shining, Jata Vedasam, the omniscient, the highest stay, the one to whom all lives cling, the soul light, the eye, as it were, of all living beings, the one who has no second, Tapantam, the giver of heat. This sun, their own Atman, their own self, the knowers of Brahman, the seers have known. Who is it they have known? Having 1,000 rays, having many rays, existing in 100 forms, that is existing in so many forms in different living beings. This sun, the life of all creation, rises. The year, going back, this is verse 9 on the next page. The year is Prajapati. It has two paths, the southern and the northern. So when the northern deviation, when the days keep getting longer and longer and longer, and the southern deviation, when the days gradually, by about a minute a day, get shorter. Those who worship sacrifice and merit as action, when the moon is their world and they come back again. So the rishis desiring offspring go to the south. This, the way of the ancestors, is matter. But seeking the self by the northern path, by asceticism, celibacy, faith, and knowledge, they win the sun. This is the support of living beings. This is the immortal, the fearless. This is the supreme goal. From this, they do not come back. This is cessation. So there, Upasani Maharaj, one of the great teachers of our lineage, likes to go on about this Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. So starting at Guru Purnima, we start the Dakshinayana, means the southern journey of the sun, when every day gets a little bit shorter than the day before. That's the time of the bhoga. That's the time of the enjoyment, of the reproduction, of getting immersed in the world. And then when we come, we to the solstice, but in the Hindu calendar, it's January 14th because it's a different kind of calendar. As the days start to get longer, we leave behind all that path of enjoyment and we go to the path of pursuing Brahman. The year is Prajapati. It has two paths, the southern and the northern. Those who worship sacrifice and merit as action win the moon as their world, and they'll come back again. So this is, Shankara says, that it's really explaining how the moon and the prana, form and formless, are creating all creatures. Because the pair is time, the year is the lord of creatures. The year is the combination of tithis. A tithi is a day and night. A tithi involves the moon and the sun because it's nearly like a solar day, but it's a lunar tithi, so it can be slightly longer or shorter. It's one click of the moon around the earth. So in the Hindu calendar, this idea of a tithi, oh wow, that's the sun and the moon together, creating something that's almost like a day, but might be 26 hours or 23 hours, depending what the moon's doing. It's a kind of an interesting calendar. So because Shankara says, oh, because we've got these tithis and they involve the sun and the moon, so how is it all working? Uh, we've got these two well-known paths of 6 months, the northern and southern journey of the sun. So if we're only doing what we're supposed to do, sacrifices and pious acts, we're going to attain the world of the moon, the world of food, a portion of the Lord of creatures who is both food and eater. But not, we're with things that are transitory. We're not with things that are eternal. So after we've used up all of our merits, we're going to come back to this world or a worse world. So these householders, according to Shankara, they want to go to heaven, they want to have children, they get what the moon gives them. And they'll end up in the world of the ancestors, he says. But by the northern route, by what these sages have just been doing, by tapas, brahmacharya, faith, seeking the knowledge of the Atman, they gain the sun. This is the stay of all lives, the immortal, the fearless, the highest goal. And from here, they will not come back. By the northern route, they reach the sun, the prana, the ether, a part of Prajapati. How do we get there? By tapas, by controlling our senses, by brahmacharya, by making ourselves the chariot of Brahman, by faith and knowledge regarding the self, by worshipping Prajapati, by seeking the self, realizing the sun in the form, I am he. This came in Isha Upanishad, right? That radiant being in yonder sun, so hum asmi, that radiant being in yonder sun, I myself am that. So they reach the sun, the abode of all lives. This is the highest goal for everyone. And from there, we don't return because we're not just pursuing worldly things now. So, in the nature of time, we get both these opportunities. We haven't quite finished this section, but let's see if we have questions. Was this making sense at all? It's a little complicated, isn't it? Great.
With praja, if the ja is born of what is pra, like what is pra like?
Pra is like it's a particle. So it's something you put onto. It's something you put onto a word to like you have jnana and you have prajna, right?
Yeah.
You have. So he's not just called Ja, which he could be called, but he's called Prajapati, the bringer forth. There's like a bringing in that pra, as best as I understand it. He's bringing the birth.
Okay. So it's like instead of it being born of, it's like maybe
Prajanana is also the word for the function of the reproductive system. Remember? Its function is prajanana.
Or like the
Br-
process of birthing?
Ja is born of. Praja, getting born.
Okay.
So he's the lord of the everything that got born, which is the prajas, which is the creatures.
And then um with Prajapati, how does how does that being fit into like Sankhya? Like where would that I know it's a different
Okay, so the question is, how does Prajapati fit into Samkhya? And the answer is, I don't think we can go there. I'm even surprised we're having Prajapati in Advaita Vedanta. The thing is, we are back in the axial age, and people are using nothing solidified the way we would like it to be solidified. So when we're talking about Samkhya, we're talking about Purusha and Prakriti.
Yeah.
But Prajapati apparently would be above Purusha and Prakriti because he has to make a pair. So it's just a different approach. And there are just these different ways of doing it. And it's just like even the word Ishvara, we're going to have a different significance to that word Ishvara in Advaita Vedanta versus how we're going to have it when we delve a little more into Patanjali next academic year and so on. So we can have the same word meaning a little different things in different lineages. And right now in this Upanishad, they're going with Prajapati, the great grandfather, which is fun for us because that's what we have for Agnihotra. Agnaye Swaha, Agnaye Dam Nama Ma Prajapataye Swaha, Prajapataye Dam Nama Ma. In the evening, Om, offering this to the fire. This belongs to the fire and not to me, offering this to the progenitor, the great grandfather. This belongs to Prajapati and not to me. And then in the morning, Om Suryaya Swaha. It's all like totally fit in the Prajapati. Same thing. So it's just a little more of a Vedic. This has gone a little more Vedic.
That's what I figured you would say.
Yeah.
And then the word for fuel, sami.
Yep.
Is that the same root as samhita?
I don't know because I am not a Sanskrit scholar.
It's fair. It's fair. It just sounded familiar.
Yep.
And then can you talk a little bit more about like the yogic upside down so the sun can't.
So in Hatha Yoga, you've got the Surya in your belly, and you've got the moon at the crown producing the soma. So that sun just like burns upwards, the way fire goes, and it like eats up the soma that the moon produces. So if you do a viparita karani, if you reverse, then the sun got put at the top and the moon is all safe. So it's kind of quaint, but it says hang out as long as you can this way and you'll lengthen your life because you'll give that moon and that soma and that juice a chance to not get burnt.
And that's because the sun, like fire, is just gonna go.
The sun is the eater, and the moon is producing the soma, which is the food, which in yogic terms ties in with having that. When I talked about this with a psychiatrist in when I was teaching in Florida long back, he said it's not any particular neurotransmitter, what Dr. Ladd calls the bliss molecules in the brain, right? It's having them in a proper balance. That bliss comes when your neurotransmitters are balanced, and that's the yogic food. It's balanced neurotransmitters or bliss molecules in the brain, or soma. That's food in the yogic sense. So it just kind of ties into this, but it's not the same.
Okay.
But it ties into the idea that the sun is the eater and the moon is the food. That's why I went off in that direction. So the overall that we're getting so far, we haven't quite finished with question one, so we'll have time to like reflect about it and maybe understand it better by next time. But the overall is everything gets created because Prajapati has a whim or gets bored and wants playmates and remembers that the last go round, the last time there was a universe and it got destroyed, Shankara says. The Shankara glosses this on. We needed a couple. That's what we needed. Let's have a couple. Who's the best couple that I can have? The sun and the moon, which is going to be the food and the eater of the food. Then we get into how amazing the sun is, because all life comes from the sun. And then we get into the idea that there's such a thing as a tithi, which is a day that is both solar and lunar, because it's right around the length of a journey of a revolution of the Earth, which is a solar day. The sun seeming to go around the Earth, right? Sunrise to sunrise. But it's a little different because it's one click of the moon around the month, and those can be different lengths. So Shankara delves into this. Oh, we have a day, and it's the sun and the moon that make a day. We have time. Everything comes from time.
And the one click is that the same as a nakshatra?
No. I think nakshatra is different.
Okay.
It's a tithi. It's like 1/28th or 1/30th, depending. It's 1/30th of the moon's journey, which is near about a day. But in Shankara's world, time is made of the sun and the moon, not just of the sun like it is for us. So then he's thinking, oh, we have time. That's something that's made of suns and moons. We have a year. In the year, there's time for both. There's a time for immersing ourselves in the temporary, and there's a time for leaving the temporary behind and going to that which changes not. All right. Shall we? It's time for our next class. Should we stop? Everyone okay? Yeah. Yeah. You're okay that she used up all the question time. Oh, you definitely you get a 10-minute break. Yes. Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to Ayurveda and Spirituality with Alakananda Ma. We hope today's exploration has ignited a spark of curiosity and insight within you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and share it with a friend. For more enlightening discussions and practical wisdom on Ayurveda and spirituality, subscribe and join our Facebook group, Alundi Ayurveda. To allow us to continue sharing valuable content, consider donating to Alundi Ashram. The links will be in the show notes. Until next time, may you walk the path of Ayurveda with grace and embrace the light of spiritual wisdom in your journey.
Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtiva